Okay. Again, let's have a review on the data analysis. We ended our discussion with the t-test for independent samples. So I hope you know now when to use this test kung nag-conduct mo og study. So do not forget class na when you say t-test for independent samples, or we call this unpaired t-test, we use this to analyze our data wherein naatay duha ka grupo nga kuhaan nato og we want to know, or we want to test if there is a significant difference. So always go back with the statement of the problem and tanawon ninyo dito kung naaba mo'y question nga, is there a significant difference? Okay? So unsa another thing na inyong tanawon, is there a significant difference between two groups only? Okay? Again, pag t-test, it's between two groups only. Dili nimo siya pwede gamiton kung naa kay tulo ka grupo. So for example, naay mga experiments or studies na ginakandak na naay tatlo ka grupo, naay treatment group, naay positive control group, ug naay negative control group. So that's already 3 groups. Therefore, you cannot use the t-test. So gamiton lang nato siya pag duha lang ka grupo. And then another thing, those two groups should be independent from each other. Meaning, imuhang samples class different from the one group, and then different pod sa sunod na or second na grupo. So independent sila mo na nga t-test for independent samples. And then another thing, since t-test is parametric na test, so kailangan normally distributed ang atuang samples. And dapat ang atuang what do you call that? Dependent variable kay either interval or ratio scale. So dapat ni siya, dili pwede na nominal, dili pwede na ordinal ang imuhang scale. But you can use this one sa kanang mga research na nagakandak og survey class. Though mugamit na sila og questionnaires na naka-Likert scale, pero most of the time nagakuha man gud ta og mean. So daghan man gud og question sa questionnaire and ginakuha ang mean. Kapag ka nagakuha ka og mean the mean will be ihimuon na siya, i-consider na siya as an interval scale. Therefore, you can use the t-test here. Okay, so for example, you want to know the knowledge of the boys and girls in GSD-MSFI about COVID-19. So lahi nga grupo ang lalaki, lahi nga grupo ang babae, and they are independent from each other. Now, knowledge ato ang ginaistoryahan. So most likely ang ato ang statement of the problem is there a significant difference between the knowledge of boys and girls in terms sa COVID-19. So t-test atong gamiton when we want to analyze our data. Now, if you don't have a software class, so for example, na atay mga estudyante dire na phone lang ang ginagamit. So mo na ang problema pag phone lang kasi we cannot download the software, we cannot use it. Though you can use the Excel for this, kung naamoy Excel sa inyong phone. But kung wala, mapilitan jud ta ani mag mano-mano na computation. So nag-discuss ko ani sa inyong statistics how to do the manual computation. Please review your notes. But since research namang good ni, most likely we are expected to use the software. But ang pinaka-importante din dapat kabaluta mo interpret sa atuang nakuha nga result. Okay? So pag nagagamit ta og software class, most of the time we will get the p-value. Kasi pag mano-mano nga computation, we will get the t-scores, and in analyzing, kailangan nato ang table. Pero pag software atong gamiton, makuha nato ang t-scores, pero makuha pud nato ang p-value. So, pwede na ta dili mo gamit sa ato ang table, p-value na lang ato ang tanawon. Kasi sa final defense ninyo class, pag quantitative ang inyong research, most of the time ang questions will be on the statistics. So paano siya i-interpret, unsa nga statistical tool inyong gigamit, paano siya i-interpret. So always remember when to use the t-test and how are we going to interpret it. So ang decision rule nato class, i-reject nato atong null hypothesis if the p-value associated with the computed p-value is less than 0.05. Supposedly, kapag ano na siya, experimental na study, ato ang level of confidence kay 0.01. So kung 0.01 atong gigamit na level of confidence, we will reject the null hypothesis if it is less than 0.01. Okay? Pag experimental na study kasi mas strict kasi ang experimental na study, we are dealing with life. So strict siya when it comes to the level of error na allowed. So 0.01 lang siya. But pag social sciences na mga studies like kanang mga nagakandak og survey, mo na ang nagagamit og level of confidence na 0.05. Thus when they reject the null hypothesis, dapat it should be less than 0.05. Pero usahay class, wala man na nakakonect sa wifi niya. Gina-allow nila for some experimental studies ang 0.05, especially if kanang mga undergrad na mga studies, kana gina-allow na siya, dili pa siya kaayo strict, pero basta mga clinical studies na gani, kana strict na gyud siya kaayo. Okay? Questions? So dapat pangutan-on mo kung pangutan-on mo unsay meaning sa inyong nakuha nga values when you do the statistics, dapat kabalo mo mag-interpret. Okay? So for example, pag mayroon kag null hypothesis, diba, it's on the negative na form. So for example, mayroon kag there is no significant difference between the efficacy of drug A and drug B. So pag ang imuhang nakuha nga p-value is less than 0.05, i-reject nimo na siya. Meaning, kung gi-reject nimo ang null hypothesis, i-accept nimo ang alternative hypothesis katong naa sa positive form. Meaning ato na ay significant difference ang drug A and drug B pag-abot sa ilahang efficacy. Okay? Ana siya pag-interpret. And then, you go back to the mean, tanawon nimo dito kung kinsa ang, for example, mas may taas na mean sa ilaha. Kung kinsa tong naay mas taas na mean, mao to siya ang mas effective. Or in the case sa blood glucose lowering, ay naaman tay lowering sa ato ang statement, tanawon pud nato ang mean dito kung kinsay mas gamay o mean when it comes sa blood glucose level, kay mao pud to ang mas effective. Sa case sa sa diuretic, ang tanawan nato kung kinsay mas taas og mean urine volume mo to'y mas effective. So dili nimo siya ma-generalize sa pag-abot sa mean ha. For example, ang your result kay there is a significant difference. Dili nato siya ma-generalize kung ang mas effective ba ang mas may taas na mean or mas may baba na mean. So nakadepende siya sa atoang study. Now class, if the computed p-value is greater than 0.05, so do not reject the null hypothesis. So makaingon ka nga, there is no significant difference. So if you are looking if naay significant difference ang positive control ug ang imuhang treatment, mas nindot na siya class nga mas taas ato ang p-value. Kay makaingon man kag there is no significant difference between the positive control and ang imuhang plant material. Remember that the positive control is already accepted and proven and tested na effective for a certain indication. So kung pag tanaw nimo nga there is no significant difference, ang meaning ato ang imuhang plant material pod effective kasi wala man sila significant difference sa ilahang efficacy. Okay? Mo na siya ang ako ang gusto makita sa inyong discussion, interpretation ninyo sa inyong result. Okay? Questions, class? We will use this table if you do the manual computation na inyong gigamit kay ang T-score. So, kailangan ninyo makuha ang difference, degree of freedom, Degree of freedom is just n-1. So, kung naakay 20 ka sample, so 20 minus 1, that's 19. And then, one tail or two tail, how do you know this? One tail if naay direction ang imuhang hypothesis. Unsay meaning anang naay direction? Example, duha ka grupo man ingon kag boys are boys are more capable than girls. So naay direction kay mas hatagan og favor ang babae kaysa sa lalaki. That's the time you do the one tail test. So kung 19 imuhang degree of freedom and then ang imuhang level of confidence is 0.05. So diri ka 0.05 and then 19. So the tabular T-score is 1.729. That's how you use the table. But most of the time, actually, we are doing a two-tailed test. Pag two-tailed test, it's non-directional. Example, there is a significant difference between boys and girls. Maingon lang ka nga naa sila'y difference duha. Pero wala ka gitagaan og favor. Wala ka nag-ingon nga mas maayo ang babae kaysa sa mga lalaki or the other way around. So kung moingon ka na there is no significant difference between drug A and drug B, that is two-tailed test class. That is non-directional. Wala man ka nag-ingon nga mas effective si drug A or si drug B. Wala siya yung direction. Wala siya ang meaning sa one-tailed o sa two-tailed test. Okay? So, review lang man ni siya, no? So, nagpasa na ba ang tanan sa inyuhang activity? Again, Isobel and Hazel, you may take the exam today. Depende when is your free time. I guess what my free time basta Wednesday. Hangtod alas 7 inyong klase. So just let me know. Just contact me. Questions, class, about the t-test? Gaya mo load, oy. Wait lang ha, let me see kung naana mong wifi. Again, the next na i-discuss nato is t-test for correlated groups or ginatawag nato ni og paired t-test. Okay? Paired t-test. So kung t-test class, two groups gihapon ni siya. Ang kalahian lang nila sa independent sample t-test, kani you have the same set of samples. So kung kinsa to ang imuhang mga subjects sa group 1, mao gihapon ang imuhang subjects sa group 2. Kaya lang ano lang naalang kay intervention in between mo na nga nahulog siya baling group 1 o group 2. Naalay intervention. Okay? So do not forget na when you say paired t-test, your samples come from the same population or they are the same set of samples subjected to two different experimental conditions. For example, the research tested the hypothesis that the amount of rest during practice has no effect on performance. So naakadinhi the same set of samples, example, the same set of students, kaya lang the first group nagsige lang sila practice, walay rest, and then pagkasunod the second group nagsige pud sila practice pero na ay rest in between. So i-check kung naa ba toy effect on their performance. So kung again magmano-mano ta nga computation, kailangan nato ni na formula. Kinsa ba dinhi ang nagamano-mano og computation class? Please tell me kung naay naga-manual computation dinhi. Walay naga-manual computation, so naay software tanan. You can either use class the SPSS software I gave you sa inyong statistics, or you can use the JASP software. Sa research, mag-JASP software lang ta para dili ta maanuhan og intellectual property kay walay license ang ato ang SPSS. Or class, you can use actually the Microsoft Excel. So if I still have time later, I'll show you how. So unsay meaning aning mga letters dinhi sa atong formula. Pag makakita gani mo og ing ani, this is summation. Meaning you have to add everything. You have to get the sum. Now, D, ang D din ha, wait lang, right. So the D here is the sum, sum of the squares of the difference between pre-test and post-test. Okay? So paired t-test is actually applicable if naamoy pre-test and post-test. So tanawan ninyo ulit inyong research design. If pre-test and post-test ba na inyong ginahimo or post-test lang? Siyempre kung post-test lang, dito lang mo sa independent sample t-test. Pero pag pre-test and post-test, you have to use a paired sample t-test. And then, capital letter N here, or small letter n, actually, it's just the sample size. Okay? It's just the sample size. So ano lang siya, kailangan lang nimo ang sum of the squares of the difference between the pre-test and the post-test. And the sample size. So dili na ko mag-dwell with the manual computation. I want it to be done using a software para diretso ta. Okay? But ang inyuhang dapat tandaan, we will still be using the same decision rule. If you are using this software, then you have still to reject the null hypothesis if the p-value is less than 0.05. And if it's greater, syempre, you have to accept it. Dili dapat nimo i-reject imuhang null hypothesis. Okay? So let's have an example here. The officers of the Philippine Pharmacist Association, Davao Chapter, conducted a research training to selected research professors. The objective is to increase the research competence of the research professor. An adapted questionnaire was used to measure the competence of the research professors before and after the training. So mahulog ni siya class og pre-test and post-test. Ano man, i-check sa ang competence sa mga subjects or sa mga samples before, and then hatagan silang training, tapos i-check na pod after the training. Muna, the same set of samples, pero you have two scores, the before and after. That's why ang gamiton dapat paired t-test. I hope you have you have understood the difference. Nakuha ninyo ang difference between the independent sample t-test and the paired t-test. So, ang independent variable na to ani, syempre, ang competence sa ato ang researchers or mga professors before and after. And then the dependent variable will be the ang ilahang scores dito sa ilahang research competence. So diri mga ni sila, mga professors ni sila, research professors before and after, and then the level of competence ang dependent variable. So kung magbuhat ta na og statement of the problem, it can be first, what is the level of research competence of the research professors before the training? Number 2, what is the level of research competence of the research professors after the training? And then, duha man nakagrupo. So, is there a significant difference in the level of research competence of the research professors before and after the training? So, nakay duha ka scores, pero they are related to each other because ano man ni sila, the same samples man sila. So, wait lang ha. Let me open the data here. I have sample data. I'll be sending it also sa inyo. This one. I-check na ko. I-send na ko sa chat ang file para na may copy. It's almost time. I actually have an admin forum after this, 8:30 to 12. Busy kayo ko today. So, igo lang jud ko, nagklase sa inyo 7:30 to 8:30. Tapos, mag-atubang na ko sa mga galang-galang sa school for the admin forum. Yes, Jessa. Ayan, nasend na nako ha, mo na siya ang data na ato ang gamiton. Yes, Jessa. Sa may ato Nagmam lagi ka sa sa chat. Nag-chat ka sa ko last week? Ako kabalo. Wait lang. Later ha, later. Ano mong chat? Ano mong chat about? Okay. Sige, chat lang ha. So, mo ni siya class ang data. Ano lang ni siya, theoretical na data. Mo ni ang mga scores sa mga professors before the training And mao ni sila ilang scores after the training. So let's see if naabay difference ang ilahang scores before and after para makaingon ta na effective ang gibuhat nga training para ma-increase ang ilahang level of competence. So when we use the JASP software, let me open it. Gara ba na siya ma-open? Letter imuhang tuyo sa Kodjas. Ano sa letter? Busy na ko. Wait lang ha. Na-busy ko last week. I had my comprehensive exam sa ako ang PhD man good. So medyo nag-brain error ko sa among exam. Wala na ako kahinomdom, Jessa. Remind ko later. Ayan. So kung mag-JASP software ta class, so aniyo na to. Ayan. I hope you can see the JASP software. Again, open lang and then nasa computer ko siya. So i-open lang nimo imong file. Take note class, ang ma-open lang ni JASP software kay katong naka-CSV file. So inyo siyang i-encode sa sa Excel tapos i-save as ninyo siya as CSV para mabasa siya ni JASP. And then i-import lang nato atong data. Remember the first column should be naa siya label. Kay pag dili niyo siya butangan og label, ang kanang first column gyud himuon ninyo siya, himuan niya og label so di na siya ma-appeal sa pag-analyze. And then we are doing t-test, paired sample t-test. Kasi the same samples man na sila. So variable pairs ato lang na siyang i-move dito sa PCAS. That's before and then we have the after. Okay? So kung makita ninyo class, automatic maghatag siya og table giving you the t-score, the degree of freedom, and the p-value. Okay? So there is a p-value here. Now kung nagmano-mano mo ng computation, gamiton nimo ng t-score and then tan-awon nimo ang imuha siyang i-compare dito sa atoang given nga table for the t-test. But since we are using Class A software, so tanawon na lang nato ang p-value nato. So unsa ganito ang atoang decision rule for this? Ang decision rule nato ani, if the p-value is less than 0.05, you have to reject the null hypothesis. So as you can see, it's 0.001. This is lesser than 0.05. Meaning kailangan nato i-reject atong null hypothesis. How do you do that? Meaning i-accept nimo imong alternative hypothesis na there is a significant difference in the level of competence before and after training. Meaning naa jud ay epekto ang training nagibuhat kay nagkaroon og difference ang scores sa mga samples nato before and after the training kay gi-reject man nato ato ang null hypothesis. Okay? Questions, class? Hello? You can also check this normality para makabalo ka kung normally distributed ba ang imuhang data. And you may also include the descriptives para makita nimo ang mean. So kung nakita ninyo class, di ba ang there is a significant difference kay gi-reject na to atong null hypothesis. So sa mean class tan-awon nimo, kailangan di ba mas dako ang ilahang score kay level of competence man. Tanaw nimo unsa nganong na significant difference asa ang mas dako og score. So we have here after. So mas dako ang score nila after the training, which means nitaas gyud ay ang level of competence nila. So bisan pag kung tanaw na to class, it's 19.7 and the other one is 20.7. Without the statistical analysis, makaingon ka gamaya pud sa nag-increase ng score. Oy. Pero statistically, it's already significant. Okay, significant na siya statistically, naa na siya effect na danay dakong effect ang imuhang gihimo nga training para magka-increase og competence sa ilahang score. Na paano maning assumption? Check. Let's go back sa ako ang how do you interpret that assumption? Check. Kabalo naman ti aning sa p-value. Pero sa assumption check class, take note, a p-value of higher than 0.05 means that the distribution is normal. So this is 0.847. This is greater or higher than 0.05. Therefore, yes, ang atuang sets of data are normally distributed. So, nakasulod siya sa normal distribution. So, tama nga mo gamit ta og paired sample t-test. Okay? Questions, class, about this?